Well, it was a documentation day today. A lot of documentation. And I probably still have another day to 2 days ish. But progress was made, and a lot of the hard figuring out how you're going to structure it, how you're going to say it, and how you're going to do it has been completed. So the first thing I did was I revamped the main README for vGraph, kind of the basic introduction. I moved the specification and implementation links up to the top here. I didn't touch these two. And then there's the pictures, and it was this nasty, ugly pink color, and I just went, no. You need something that looks a little more happy. So I did blue and yellow, which is still not nice, but it's not like hideous. Or maybe it is. Who knows? Who cares? But I went ahead and fleshed that out. Ta-da! And then it was the specification documentation. So this before was, man, I'm not even sure how. Yeah, the page just did not flow very well. It was this giant chunk of things, and yeah, didn't flow well. I'm a little thirsty today too. So what I did is I created these two sections. There's a vGraph API section and kind of an underlying property graph representation section. So in the vGraph API, it's kind of like what's related to what. You have a graph that contains elements, a root, and a commit. And elements have an ID, label, hash, and properties, and this is a this, and edges connect nodes. Just to kind of orient yourself a little bit in the space. And then here's all your external stuff, graph repositories. Here's all your kind of your internal, special properties, deleted flags, original properties, meta nodes, things like that. More detail there. And then we have the underlying property graph representation. So this is, because we introduced that metadata, that root node with the ring, we now have two different categories of nodes. So this is a documentation of that. We have the data side and we have the metadata side. So in the data side, we have a node with an edge, and then we have a boundary node with just a regular edge pointing to it. In there we describe that an edge that connects to a boundary node doesn't act any differently than a regular edge. And here we have a node all by its lonesome. We talk about how we don't have to have a connected graph. We're not making that restriction. And that's the data side. Now the metadata side, we have a root node which contains the version of vGraph we're in, and then it also has, on the metadata side, a commit ring. So that's what this is right here. So commit, 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 commit. And then the first commit is pointed to from a commit edge from the root to the first commit, and then the last commit here points to the root node. And then edges always go from older commits to newer commits. So you follow an edge to go to the next commit. It doesn't point to the commit before it. The one before it points to the new one. That may change. I'm not exactly sure if I like that or not, but it makes sense that I start at the root node and I say, okay, go here to the first commit, the last commit points to me. Maybe I can switch that. How would it say? It would be, okay, I go to the root node and I go out to the last commit, and then the first commit points to me. I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of just leaving it like this, where you go oldest to newest, and that's all you got to remember. And then a few notes. The most important thing is underlying operations are the same. Function definitions, parameters, return values, all that fun, happy thing stuff. So I did that. That took a good chunk of the day to go through and split these out and create these pictures and things like that, and kind of have it make sense. So the first time you come to the specification, you kind of go, okay, I can figure out which direction I'm going and how to orient myself. And then for each of the individual pieces, so here's what it is, restrictions, and then methods for those that are objects and classes. I'm not entirely sure how to say, okay, here's to separate out, here is the objects and classes or slash classes, and here are the other ancillary things. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll keep on cracking away at it. So what I do is in the method, I have here, and then I have the parameter there. I have kind of a small description of what it does, any notes that are there, the parameters it takes in, what this is, and then kind of the actions you take. Now these are really, really, really generic. So for add node, if you have an invalid label, error, generate a new ID. Create a new node in the underlying graph. If possible, set its ID to this and its label to this, depending on your implementation, and then set these things. It's very, very generic, but yet here's all the things that you need to do to the graph underneath the covers. So hopefully that will be enough. I have a lot of documentation to touch. It's just, I have to go through it and update it to all the things we talked about. You'll notice on the constructor I didn't talk about if there is no root node, create one. I gotta add that. I'm actually going to do that, even though I'm technically at the end of my day, starting to wrap up and go for dinner. I'm hungry. But yeah, just doing more of that. May work some on Saturday just to crank through some more things, but hopefully in a day or two I'll be done with the documentation, and then I can go update vGraph and actually publish the API and get that taken care of. And then I'm not sure if I'll go to decap or ptree. I need to go to ptree because I figured out how to do sources, and I figured out a new flavor thing. So in ptree you have what and you have why. I'm going to add a third thing that is how. So and it's going to be kind of a circle. So you have how, which is, okay, how am I going to find the why? How am I going to investigate the whys? And that is your research log. And a how generates whys, and whys generate whats, and whats generate more hows. And a how can also generate hows as well. And so we end up with this circle where you keep on going until your family tree is done, or until you run out of hows. I'm not sure if how is the best word to use, but you've got what, where, when, why, and how, and who. And how kind of fits. So I may play with that, do some updates, figure out why namespacing, things like that. But that's it for today. Have a great weekend.